Hello everyone, I'm Rinzing Ongmu Sherpa and I'm from Sikkim. I'm currently doing my PhD from JNU New Delhi. Today I actually wanted to discuss on a very relevant and an important topic amidst the growing pandemic, that is on domestic violence. Ironically, it is also a topic which is not receiving as much importance as it actually should be getting and as much limelight as it should be getting. So that's why I thought of talking about it. And when you actually look at the UN estimate, there are around 168 million people who are predicted to undergo some kind of humanitarian crisis by 2020, like the one we are undergoing now, that is infectious spread of disease and sometimes even climate change. So that was predicted then. And out of it, 25% of the population would be girls and women of reproductive age. So the WHO also took out a report where it was shown that 13 to 69% of women has experienced some kind of physical abuse. 4 to 49% have experienced some kind of very severe physical abuse, and 6 to I think around 59% of them have experienced some kind of sexual abuse from their partners or from their in-laws. So I'm sure most of us are aware of the National Commission for Women, whose report since the time of lockdown, that is from March till April, showed that there were around 587 reported such cases, out of which 239 were actually about domestic violence. Even according to the Economic Times, it has been shown that there has been a twofold rise in domestic violence since the lockdown. And when you also go by National Family Health Survey, according to 2015 and 16, it has been clearly shown that 40% of married women undergo some kind of violence from their partners or from their in-laws. Recently, Antonio Guterres, who's the Secretary General of United Nations, also showed that this domestic violence should be something that has to have a very important place when a government should be catering towards COVID, and it has also addressed all the governments and of all the states to take it as to take prevention and redress of women's grievances and to spend on online complaints and shelter homes as being of utmost importance, because of which most of the European countries has also addressed domestic violence as an essential service so far, which I think is also the need in India as well. So when I was talking about data and statistical reports about violence against women, what we also need to actually concentrate on is why is there been such a rise, and even if there has been such a rise, why are there not as many complaints, and why has there not shown the double fold complaint which is being estimated, and how do we need to go beyond data in order to look at all the problems that is happening and because of which it's perpetuating, especially after the lockdown. So the concept of home, as we all know, firstly is changing. It has been a multi-dimensional space where people are carrying out a lot of activities like online schooling and online office work, and sometimes it's been a space for cooking, workout, a lot of things. And it is also important to note that domestic violence is also something that varies according to caste, class, and geographical location. And given such the economic crisis that the world is going through and our country is going through, and job losses and many other things, there is bound to be frustration. And not just because of this, as it is, most of the people are frustrated because it's a lockdown, we cannot move anywhere, our everyday taken for granted world has actually ceased to exist anymore, and it is bound to bring frustration to many people, the brunt of which are mostly being faced by women in the name of domestic violence. So ironically, the term stay home, stay safe is not actually, it does not apply for many, where homes have become a chamber of torture for many. And another important thing I would like to point out is domestic violence cannot always be equated with wife beating or physical abuse. Like recently, when I'm sure most of us are aware of the horrific Morena case in Madhya Pradesh, where a father raped his daughter, 18-year-old daughter, at the consent of the mother, which also brings us to the question as to what, like, the domestic violence, it needs to cover a lot of things. And what is also important is, as women, what I have also seen, that most of the women, they may not be aware of what all includes in domestic violence, or what is a violence. And half the time women are not even aware that a violence is being perpetuated on them by their husbands or by their in-laws or by their relationship partners. So you do not really know when actually such an aspect is happening, and women are not aware of such abuses. So I would like to point out few of the abuses that actually happens. So the first and the foremost, which is mostly taken as an important abuse, is the physical abuse, where a person is against their will, and they are coerced physically, and they are kicked, slapped, or anything that goes against their consent of physically coercing from the other person. And when you also look at other kind of abuse, it is emotional abuse or emotional violence, when a person is made to feel like they have they are blamed all the time basically, and they are belittled, and they are also made to feel guilty about many things, and they are in short disrespected by the other person. So other kind of violence again would be sexual abuse or sexual violence, when there is marital rape or molestation, and in simple, when a person does not understand that a simple no means no. Another kind of violence is mental or psychological, or you can also call it verbal, which is similar to emotional abuse or emotional violence, when the other person disturbs you by doing a lot of things like blaming, making you feel guilty, making you feel that you're wrong always, which takes a psychological toll on the other person, like the person who is facing it. And the other last kind of abuse is economic abuse or economic violence, when you do not have control over your own financial resources, when the other person is exploiting your financial resources, be it in your own consent, or they are just fooling you, and you are just you just giving them a welcome to just abuse you or violate you that way, because sometimes we really do not know that we're being financially abused. So these are the kinds of abuses which I am not talking about, which is also mentioned in Section 3 of Domestic Violence Act of 2005, and I think people should look at it. Like I mentioned, most of the time women do not really know that they are actually being violated, they are actually being abused. It is also because women do not talk about it. They do not even share with anyone, they just face it alone most of the time. And the other reason why such crime is actually continuing is because there are silent spectators, people who have actually seen a person facing domestic violence from her partner or from their in-laws. The silent spectators or the third person, they just agree to keep silent on it, and not to intrude in their personal spaces, and because of which it is being carried out. And the other important thing, why is it? Because of course, the patriarchal and the sexist and misogynistic society we all belong to, where men, they perform such acts of violence or domestic violence, so-called in the name of love. They are entitled to sexually, physically, emotionally abuse their women. So I think these are the reasons why it has been continuing so far, and I think it's high time that women should actually speak up, share what they have experienced or gone through, and not just normalize such an act, because what is happening is not normal and it is completely wrong. And you also need to remove the social stigma associated with it. Come forth and talk about it, be it with your friends or your sisters or your family members or with anyone, because that is just completely not fine to tolerate. So the other important thing I would also like to highlight is on the kinds of sexual abuses that women go through, which is I think a very neglected area so far, because once you are in a lockdown, molestation, rape cases, marital rape, so many cases may happen or have happened, and there are chances of unwanted pregnancies, unsafe sex, unsafe childbirth, transfer of STD. So many other things are also bound to happen, which I think is an area which is not given much importance to, and it is underfunded. So there is a need for gender sensitive medical norms or gender sensitive medical facilities that needs to be opened up, which is the need of the hour. So I think India has, it has, after the lockdown, imposed Domestic Violence Act of 2005 in all the center and the state government. But there is also a lot of need further to work on the same. Many of the countries that has interestingly carried out in combating this ill is how Spain has actually done. Most of the European countries have done it in a very creative manner. Like in Spain, the lockdown is not actually applicable for women who feel abused at home, and because it does not really make sense staying at home not feeling safe. Rather, if they are abused, they can actually come out of their homes. There is a liberty for them to not adhere to the lockdown. And 20,000 hotels, I think most of you are aware of how 20,000 hotels were converted into shelter homes for women. And I think in a place called Yukon in Canada, where they were actually giving out free cell phones along with internet facilities, so that the women could alert that they are being abused or they are being violated. And also the famous red dot process, where a woman being physically abused or being abused are put a red dot around their hand in order to alert the people, and they are taken care of within just 3 days. So these are few of the interesting aspects that were taken up, and I think as a society as well, and it's being a civil society, being simple people, from grassroots level of, I think most importantly, awareness should be brought about. Awareness that women are not alone. There are people to listen to them. There are people to cater to their needs, and to make them feel significant enough as being an important aspect of the society, and also to make them realize that what is happening with them is not to be normalized. It is not at all to be normalized. They should come out, open up, talk with people, and I think that is the most important thing. Awareness of the kinds of abuses they are facing, awareness that they are not alone. And neighbors also play a very important role. They should alert the people. I mean, like, if they know that someone nearby is facing or having facing domestic violence, they are not alone, and they should alert people. And the other important thing is also how women as a group should come together in solidarity with each other, and should form groups. Like in any area, a woman can have a WhatsApp group, which is obviously now physically having this group is not possible. So online groups, so as to just alert in a very simple manner, in one click, that someone is being abused, and they should be there for each other. So that way, and helplines, call line, there are a lot of facilities now, but it should be made very feasible. Like, women can actually just by a missed call maybe alert. So these are just simple instances of what I feel. Fundraising is very important at this point of time, so that there are more we can make up more shelter homes, medical camps, medical facilities, which should be around the clock. And lastly, I also feel that women at this point who have undergone domestic violence also needs, of course, psychological support and counseling and so on, which I think right now should be made very feasible through WhatsApp groups or simple calls, so that they can once again return back to normalcy. And the other thing, the most important thing, is that we should remove it as a social stigma or a social problem. Social stigma, and the fear within them of what will happen if I complain. I think that is a very slow process, but I think that has to be removed slowly by alerting them about the kinds of abuses, by letting them know that they are important as members of the society, and letting them know that they are not alone. Otherwise, without doing all this, and pandemic as an excuse for not catering to domestic violence and women's need, and I'm sorry, that is not done, because women are equally a very important part of the society. And if that is to happen, if people are just to feel like domestic violence is not as important a case to be catered to, then I'm sorry, pandemic is also once again mirroring misogyny, patriarchy, and sexism, which is already prevalent in our society. And I think right now that is something we should go beyond. So that is what I wanted to talk about. Thank you very much for listening to me till the end. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel, and also leave a comment on what kind of topics we can further make for you all, mostly related to social issues.